There we go.
And we're on. Okay. Good evening.
Hello.
My name is Nelda Schulte.
I'm Gil. Donker's good.
And my business is called neldaschulte.com, which is oddly enough exactly what's on the board behind me, suspiciously enough. And neldaschulte.com is dedicated to helping property investors and landlords build a profitable real estate business. Now, as you know, part of being an investor is choosing the right property, and that's what tonight's topic with Darcy Houston is all about. But once you own a property, you need to know what to do with it, and you need to know what to do with the tenants legally. Luckily, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, and I have articles, courses, and videos to help you avoid making expensive mistakes. They're all on my website, www.neldaschulte.com. All right, now we're ready to begin. Tonight's topic is student investments, and we're joined tonight by our special guest, Darcy Houston. Welcome, Darcy.
Oh, thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Darcy has been a landlord in BC since 2014, and before that, she was a homestay host. I knew I'd get it eventually. For 4 years. Darcy has used her experience from both roles to refine how she and her husband structure their furnished student rental business in Victoria. Now, something you don't know about Darcy that's not on her bio that she sent me, but I know about her, is that Darcy's had a very interesting life. And one interesting fact about Darcy I'd like to share with you is that in her youth, she was a magician's assistant. How cool is that? How many people do you know who were a magician's assistant? Darcy's the only one I know.
She also plays a mean game of pool.
Yes, you know, if she says, I just learned last week, don't buy it. Or you'll be walking. Anyway, welcome, Darcy. We're really glad that you're here. And thank you so much for sharing your information with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks so much. It like I said, pleasure to be here. And yeah, I haven't been sought in 3 for many, many years now, but it was definitely fun.
That would be a good way to lose weight.
Yeah, that's the problem. I don't think I'd fit anymore.
Well, that's an experience I haven't had, and I probably won't at this point, and I'm okay with that. So switching back to real estate, why did you decide to go into student rentals? What made you choose student rentals?
We were fortunate enough to find a duplex in Victoria that had 2 separate pieces, and we wanted to rent out the front house, but it's a very unique piece of real estate, and we have a workshop in the basement that we need to go through the house in order to get to the workshop. And so we thought, well, if we rent out the whole place, there are some people who are not going to want somebody traipsing through the premises that they're renting. So we decided that we would do a by the room rental. And I remember how difficult and strange it was trying to find an appropriate rental when I moved to Victoria to go to school. So we thought, well, let's be landlords for students who are looking for accommodation here. So our rentals, initially, they were restricted to just students, and we did that for many, many years. And it's only recently that we've kind of shifted things a little bit, and now we're opening it up to primarily students, but also young professionals who are trying to get started in Victoria.
Yeah, because housing there is very, very expensive.
Yep, sure is.
Expensive in Calgary. Actually, Calgary's rental prices hadn't really dropped that much during COVID, which surprised me. But Victoria is so much more, and the wages aren't as high as they are here. So yeah, that makes for a very difficult situation if you're looking for a first-time place when you're getting established or studying.
And when you're a student, you don't have an income necessarily anyway. So
yep. Well, we've been trying to keep it affordable, and that said, we've shifted how we do things a little bit, and it's a smidge more expensive than it used to be, but by contrast with the rest of the market, I still think it's amazing value given everything that we've rolled into the package.
Yeah, that's excellent. So you mentioned that you've got a unique rental situation where you've got that workshop in the basement. And does that make you exempt from BC's Residential Tenancy Act?
It sure does. That was one of the things that, I checked into this right away. We talked to a residential tenancy branch advisor when we were setting up our rentals and explained how the house is set up. We have a basement workshop that it has an exterior door, but it's kind of like a castle keep. So it has long bars that slide into brackets on the wall that lock the door. So you cannot open it from the outside. And so we explained that to them and said, well, if we want to get there, we have to go through the common areas in the house. And they said, yes, under section 4.2C of the Residential Tenancy Act in BC, if the owner shares, and it has to be the owner, shares the bathroom or kitchen facility with the tenant, then it's exempt from the act. So they said, yes, in fact, you would be exempt. Now, we've since had that tested twice by tenants who, even though we told them that we were exempt, they insisted upon taking their, in both cases, it was because we had charged them for stuff that they'd wrecked. And, they insisted on taking it to the residential tenancy branch to try and get their deposit back. And in both cases, we were successful in arguing that the residential tenancy branch does not apply to our property. And so the tenant was forced to actually comply with their lease agreement with us, which says we have the right to charge them for stuff that they wreck. So that was quite helpful.
Yeah.
Right.
Helpful, yes. Yeah. Well, that's good. So what do you include in your rental rates and what do you exclude?
So our rental rates, it includes, each tenant has their own private room. So that's what largely what they're paying for. They have a private room. They have all of the utilities included. They have full access to all of the common areas in the house. The laundry is not currently pay machines. It's just included in the rent. It includes Wi-Fi. And most recently, we've added housekeeping because that was one of the things with the shared house. There's 5 rooms in it, and with 5 people living together, it was always a little bit of a battle trying to get the tenants to clean up after themselves. And of course, it's a 100-plus-year-old character house, and we wanted to make sure that they were treating the house well and not damaging things. And that means not tracking dirt through the house and not grinding food into the floors and things like that. So we were always having this kind of back and forth struggle with our tenants to keep the place in a relatively good order. So this latest intake of tenants, what we did is we changed our structure and decided that we would bring in a house cleaner for once a week. And so we've added that into the rental charge, and it has reduced the stress dramatically. So now the only time that we have to deal with housekeeping is if something happens to our poor housekeeper. Unfortunately, this week she has bronchitis, and so she's not able to attend. So, in those cases, then we go over and we do a little bit of a lick and a promise to tide them over till next week and to make sure that things are still, maintained in a reasonably sanitary condition and that they're getting the services that they're paying for. But we found bundling it all together is really helpful. We used to include things like, toilet paper in the bathrooms and hand soap and stuff like that. And we've scaled back from that. And we've said, okay, so you're on your own for providing all of those types of consumables, but we do provide all the cleaning products because we want to make sure the housekeeper has what she needs.
Right. Yeah, that's fair. I even when I rented rooms in my house in Fort McMurray, when I lived in the same house as my renters, I ended up including housekeeping because same thing. Mm-hmm. Except my tenants were all tech workers. They were all professionals and they worked many, many hours, long days. And when they came home, I knew I wouldn't want to. Like if I worked 14 hours a day or 12 hours and I was traveling for 2 hours, I'd want to go to bed. I wouldn't think, oh, maybe I'll do some vacuuming tonight. Maybe do a little dusting. I just didn't, it wasn't realistic. And so the housekeeping helped a lot. Then they were really happy they had that service provided. There's no stress between us. Everything. And it was somebody else who was coming in.
Exactly. And I find that really, it's just relaxing. It just takes that one extra thing off of my plate to be nagging them about. And, I'm not your mom, I'm your landlord. So, drawing lines, right? Distinctions.
Yep.
And the one other thing that I have found helpful is built right into our lease. It says that if the tenants don't maintain the premises in a reasonably clean condition, like clean up after yourself when you're cooking and pick up after yourself if you drop something, and don't leave things all over the common areas, because, you know, quite frankly, it's disrespectful to your fellow tenants and it doesn't set a good example. And then the housekeeper is not going to pick up after you. She's going to clean around the mess. So we've told them that, like the lease says, and they agree to before they move in, that if they're not keeping the place reasonably good in between housekeeping, we can bring in the housekeeper another time and their rent goes up.
Oh.
So they have, you know, they did have a little bit of settlement issue around that. And they asked me, would I please post a schedule for the stuff that they actually have to do, you know, like taking out the recycling and taking out the garbage and, you know, doing the things that need doing in between housekeeper visits. So we've done that now, and that seems to be working well also. And it helps if they're the ones that are kind of driving that. So I just presented it to them as an issue. That's the other thing that we do. We have a monthly house meeting, and it gives them a chance to tell us about any issues in the house, to talk through things, give them some solutions, tell them what we expect based on our experience, you know, let them know whatever is going on. And we do some things that are a little kind of odd, you know, maybe not traditional landlordy type stuff.
Does it involve magic tricks and sewing people in house?
Not entirely, but we did a pumpkin carving with our tenants for in October. So about halfway through October, or actually I think it was the third weekend, we held a pumpkin carving. And so we bought all the equipment and supplies and everything, and we brought out a crock pot full of hot mulled apple cider, and had a lot of them come out. And some of them had never done this before. They're from other countries, and so this was a first for them, and they thought it was really interesting to get to participate in these kinds of cultural opportunities. And I love doing stuff like that because it makes it a little bit more homey. And so, you know, I want our tenants to you know, feel comfortable with us and to want to come to talk to us if they do run into issues. And so I find things like that do help.
Yeah, absolutely, which is great.
Yep, I agree. So have you been impacted much by COVID?
Yeah, kind of. We had multiple tenants at the very beginning of the pandemic who had issues with their rent, and so they had applied for the COVID rental subsidies that BC offered. So we didn't have any impacts on our income at that point. But what we did do is we had some deferred maintenance that we had been meaning to do. And we got notice from a couple of our tenants that they were moving out. And so we offered one the opportunity to move out early, to end her lease early without penalty and let the house go empty. And we spent the last year doing a whole bunch of renovations, you know, the stuff that you really can't do with tenants in the house, like refinishing all the floors and replacing toilets and repainting, like substantial repainting. So we took our sweet time getting her done. And then our new intake was just in this past September. And the other thing that COVID did is it changed one of my interview questions, because I was asking our international students, you know, how they were planning on addressing the quarantine requirements when they got to Canada, because I told them, you know, this is a shared house, you cannot quarantine here. So you have to have a plan for how you're going to do that. And then when I was thinking about that, I would talk to the Canadian tenants and say, so I guess you know, this question doesn't really apply to you, but are you vaccinated? And I don't know if I'm allowed to ask or not, but I think if I'm putting a group of people together, and if I'm going to be interacting with them personally, I want to know that we're on the same footing on that. And I thought it would be really unfair to introduce one person who's unvaccinated into a house full that is vaccinated, because then it becomes a health and safety risk. Yes. So yeah, that was one of the impacts that COVID had for us.
Wow. Okay. So if your students are mostly international students, how do you screen them? Because I know for us, when we ran a property management business, international tenants posed a bit of an issue. We had a bit of a different process for them than we had for our Canadians. What do you do to screen people?
Um, gosh, I don't know how widely I want this getting out, but I don't actually run a credit check. And the reason for that is almost all of our students, they're students. They don't have credit cards. They've never had a credit card. The international students, we have never had issues with. I have gotten very adept at spotting the, I'm on a cruise ship right now and my dad will wire you the money, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. Because, you know, the scams I can spot from quite a ways off. Typically, I will host a WhatsApp or Facebook call with the international students so that, well, first off, we're not paying long distance. And second, I go through a screening interview with them. And I ask them a whole bunch of questions around, you know, what is it that they're looking for in a place, and have they lived in shared accommodations before, and what kind of, you know, what kind of a room are they looking for? You know, do they want something hotter? Do they want something cooler? Bigger room, smaller room? Like, is money more important, or do you want more space? I ask them where they're living, you know, what they're studying, if they go to school. There's a few things that I ask that are almost like trick questions. Like, what's the best thing about your field of study? What's the worst thing about your field of study? What would bother you when you're living with other people? And do you have any concerns about being in a co-ed house? How do you resolve conflicts with people when they come up? What do you like to do for fun? And here's one of the trick questions. How much do you smoke? I do not ever ask them if they smoke, because then if they're trying to quit, they'll say no. If I ask them how much they smoke, they'll say, oh, well, I'm down to 2 a day. And I really think moving into a non-smoking house is going to help me with the quit. I'm like, thanks, see you later, bye. Because that's not what we're here for. We're not here to help you quit. We're here to provide a non-smoking property. And so that's, and I do ask them, you know, when I do a credit check, what am I going to find, whether or not I do a credit check? And we have not had any issues with people unable to pay their rent. We also make it really clear that our lease is a fixed term lease agreement. And it is based on a standard residential tenancy agreement, but I customized it like crazy because of the fact that it's a shared house. And then I added some things that are along the lines of, you know, if your rent isn't paid, we will add surcharges. And, you know, if you don't catch up by such and such a date, out you go. And it's a fixed term lease. So, you know, if you're getting to the end of your lease term and you want to stay, if we want to keep you, then we agree to a new fixed term lease. And if we can't sit down and get that contract in place, when your rent or when your lease expires, out you go, you're moving. And you don't have the option to stay because it does not go month to month. So it's a bit different that way as well.
So we can actually do that here in Alberta regardless, but in BC, the Residential Tenancy Act, or whatever the BC version of it, says that once a fixed term is ended, then it goes month to month, and that's something landlords don't have control over. And this is the benefit you have of not having to fall under that umbrella, because you actually have that level of control. And that actually is quite a strong argument in favor of having the student housing type or shared housing type of environment.
Yep, absolutely. And it does have to be something where, you know, you have a reason to be in the tenants, like in the premises. So, you know, that whole shared kitchen and bathroom. And the big thing was, you know, when my husband is working in the workshop downstairs, the arbitrator agreed with us that it would be completely unrealistic and unreasonable to expect him to shut down everything, close his workshop, lock his workshop, exit the building, go to the other house, enter that house, go to the bathroom, and then do it all in reverse to come back and resume work. There's a perfectly useful bathroom right upstairs. And they agreed with that. And so, yeah, we're very happy with the structure, and we think it gives us a great deal more flexibility. So if you can get that kind of a unique rental environment, I'm a big fan.
But are you governed under the Innkeepers Act? is there an act that you are legislated under? Because under Alberta law, part of room rental, a very tiny portion of it is under the Residential Tenancies Act, but also a part of it is under the Innkeepers Act.
That's a really interesting question. I think we would be if it was a shorter term rental, like if we were doing a bed and breakfast or something like that, we probably would be. I've never looked into that. I don't even know if BC has an Innkeepers Act. When we were told that we would be exempt from the Residential Tenancy Act, at no point did anyone ever say, oh, but here's the one that does govern you.
Okay.
So I've never worried about that. Like I have a very good contract in place. And, we have documentation for all kinds of things. We went so far as to develop a barbecue agreement. So one of our tenants was allowed to have a barbecue, but they had to have a written agreement with us in place before they got one, because we don't want somebody who is incapable of managing the high demands of charcoal to set the place on fire, right? So, wanted to make sure they're being responsible. And that's one way of ensuring that.
It is. And I'm actually really happy about a couple of the things that you said. One of them is with cleaning, you had a cleaning person who's coming, but you've told them, you specified with a cleaning checklist, this is what I do expect you to do in between. Because you have to spell everything out for people because they can't read your mind. Yep. And he said people come from different cultures, and even within families, within Canadian cultures, everyone's got a different culture of cleaning.
Yeah.
What might be clean to someone might not be clean to you.
Yeah.
And then
I always say there's Nelda clean, and then there's clean and there's Nelda clean.
Yeah.
When I was going to grad school in Bloomington, Indiana, I had a roommate I loved, but she didn't grow up, her mother never cleaned anything. Her parents didn't clean, and they never almost ever took out the garbage. Like if the garbage was overflowing, they would just put another garbage beside it, and they keep doing that, right? So I was always cleaning, and plus we had cockroaches and rodents.
Oh.
Because it was a humid, warm place. And if you didn't want a huge problem, you had to stay really clean. And so I turned kind of neurotic about cleaning, especially when I had a paper due. I was very clean. I'd always be cleaning everything up. So there again, that kind of reminds me that, you don't know what background people come from, what's acceptable to them. They don't know what's acceptable to you. So if you document it, if you spell it out, you give them the documentation, you explain it to them, then they can't say they didn't know, and you've done your due diligence and you've told them. And then the other document that I like is every time you have an amendment to your contract, barbecues, whatever, you document that as well, because it's so important to break things down.
And we have a couple different versions of our lease agreement. One of them is just the standard lease, and the other one is a guarantor lease. Because a few times, first year students, a few times we have had tenants moving in that are 18 years old. That is not legal age in BC. In BC, you are 19 before you're legally allowed to enter into a contract. And so in that case, we will ask the tenant's parents to sign their lease as a guarantor. The tenant also signs, but we get the parent to sign their lease as a guarantor because we want to make sure that if this kid turns out to be a bit of a flake, mom and dad are on the hook for the rental amount. And I think that also helps to kind of hold them accountable. And, that said, we have learned some things the hard way, especially like with the international students. We had, like I said, the laundry is included in the rent. It's not a coin-op machine. We had one tenant bringing in laundry for her friends. And so we have since amended the lease agreement to read that laundry is for tenant use only. And, if that's abused, we will put coin-op machines in the laundry room. But, for right now, as long as the existing washer and dryer are operating fine, then we're going to leave it as is, and up to them to make sure that stays respectful, I guess is a good word.
Yeah. I used to have that issue even when I had roommates in my farm, because people would get very familiar. They'd bring their boyfriend or girlfriend in to pick them up to go someplace. And then a couple of times I had people's girlfriends, showering there, doing their laundry there. At one point, I just called them down and I said, I'm not trying to be a curmudgeon about this, but my utility bill this last month, the upstairs and downstairs, was $800. So that's laundry, showers. Like everyone likes to take hot showers. Everyone showers every day. Everyone likes to have clean clothes. I said, and then we start adding other people onto that. I'm paying a lot of, and I'm not recouping that. So that is the amount of money I would be charging for one room rental, $800. So that means, should I have the room rental or should I not have a room rental? Because if I'm spending $800 a month for laundry or utilities, it's not worth my while. So
Yep.
when I presented it that way, they said, okay, we get it, we understand. I said, not trying to be rude, but same thing as you're talking about. This is just for tenants use only. If
Yep.
you pay rent, you can use those shower, you can use the laundry facilities, you can park in the driveway. If you're not a tenant, you can't do those things. So,
We've actually amended the lease again. Here's another one of the things that we learned the hard way, to add a statement that if the utility usage is more than, I think it's like 25% or something like that, more than normal for that time of year, that we have the ability to levy a surcharge, because we had a group of tenants in there for a while. And I think this was compounded by the girl who was taking in laundry. But, some of the other roommates were spending a good hour in the shower, long hair, and it would take them forever. And, showering every single day. And, that's great. I love that you're a nice, clean person. But, maybe you could consider a 20-minute shower in the interest of the environment and every other thing. And our utility bill went through the roof. And the unfortunate part of building in the utilities is, it's good because the tenants know what their rent is going to be and what to expect. And we can say, hey, here's the flat rate. But it's not great because when the bills get out of control, then we're the one that eats that out of, the money that they're putting in. There's less available to cover other things like, the big fat mortgage payment.
Yeah.
So, we need to make sure there's a balance. And so a lot of the time that's passed on to future tenants. So this kind of utility surcharge idea is our way of making sure that if our tenants are being irresponsible with the utilities, that does not get passed on to someone else, that they get to eat part of that.
no, that's good.
So
Yeah, that's great.
So what do you do during the summer with your rentals if you've got students?
So I'm guessing your students leave during the, they're only there during the academic year, then they leave and they come back, or do they stay?
actually, we've had a lot of them stay, and part of that, so part of that is the international students. They're more likely to stay than the Canadian students. A lot of the Canadian students, they go home for the summertime. And this was also one of the reasons that we decided to expand out and say, okay, so if you're a young professional, or maybe you just graduated and you want to stay in our house, we're not going to throw you out because you're no longer a student. If we like you and you like us and we want to do a new lease, then we'll do that. So we have not actually had any issues. Our students, in fact, have been advertising our place amongst themselves. And we've had additional tenants that were referrals from other tenants. This is particularly true in our the students that are international students. They talk amongst themselves. They're like, hey, we've got a really sweet situation over here. If you're looking for a place, maybe you could check with our landlady and see if there's any rooms coming open. And we've had that happen a time or two. And I do try to balance things. I don't want the house to get really cliquey. And so what I've tried to do is, if there are students from similar language families, that we don't have any more than like 2 people from one language family, so that they're not like freezing out others and having conversations in a different language that, some of the tenants don't understand and can't participate in. And again, it's all about being respectful and being able to share that shared environment in a positive way. And one other thing that you mentioned that I wanted to mention is that you were talking about your place in Fort McMurray and how people would have their boyfriend and girlfriend over. One of the things that we do that's maybe not quite so common is we have made it really clear they're not allowed to have overnight guests, because we don't want.
But they would still come and have a shower.
Oh, well, they come over during the daytime, but, between the hours of 11 and 7, 11 p.m., 7 a.m., out they go. Make sure they get on the last bus heading home or what have you, so that between 11 and 7, it is tenants only. And we do try to enforce that just to make sure that, you know, somebody's not getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go to the bathroom and tripping over somebody's girlfriend or boyfriend and feeling awkward, because, you know, that's not what we want either. We want them all to feel like this is home. So have visitors. And, you know, for right now, we have an all male house. We used to have an all female house, and that had some issues because the girls actually, they're a little harder to deal with sometimes than the guys are. The guys seem way more easygoing, and they're just, you know, looking for a good place to live.
I found the same thing, and men were kind of restricted to territories. Like you said, this is where you can put your stuff in the kitchen. This is your shelf in the fridge. You can put your stuff in the room. That's it. There's no other closet space for you. They lived with it. Women would always kind of fill over and take over, and you know, and they decided they wanted to bend the rules a little bit.
Let's talk shoes. Just
Yeah, exactly.
To be more straightforward. I don't know if it's just the men that I had, but I had about, I don't know, 12 years of male roommates. I had very female roommates, 2 or 3 or 4. 2 of them I really liked.
Katie is
one's
sweet,
still a good friend, but most of them were males, and I found them to be much easier to deal with than women.
Yep. That was our experience too. And you know, I mean, the guys don't seem to try to game the system, if you will. You know, we've come into the house when we had the female tenants. This was kind of funny. So we had issues with, we'd come in and they'd have the thermostat cranked to like 25, 26 degrees. The girls in the upstairs room would have their windows open because they were too hot. And the girl downstairs had the thermostat cranked, and she was walking around in like short shorts and a tank top in the middle of winter. And we're like, put on a sweater. And so we put a lockbox on the thermostat and said, okay, we're going to leave it at 21 degrees because that seems like a reasonable, comfortable, you know, moderate temperature. And we came in one day and there was a bag of frozen peas on top of the lockbox. And we're like, oh, come on. So, you know, that whole gaming the system, right?
I would never even have thought of that.
No, I wouldn't. But it's like an animal would do to thaw another animal. Or so, I don't know. It's just when you think you kind of got it all nailed, and then something else happens. Yeah,
but you do learn the hard way sometimes, and you know, hopefully it's not too expensive a lesson.
No, even adult tenants, I find some of them are always going to do that. They're always going to think, oh, well, maybe I can sneak this one past. Some people won't. They're going to be very respectful about your rules and understand it's not my house.
Yeah.
You know, I don't own it. I have to follow the rules. And other people are going to be like, yeah, but I want to do this anyway.
There's a lot of people who just want to see how much they can get away with. So
So that's the biggest learnings with student rentals. Oh, you mentioned something about a toilet, because this comes up fairly frequently, by the way, and I've seen it when I've been traveling. You see these instructions on a cubicle, you know, for a Western style toilet, where this is how to stand on it. This is how to use the toilet, a Western style toilet. Did you have to have discussions or draw pictures for people about that?
We didn't have specific conversations about that. We did have conversations about how not to clean the bathroom, i.e., you don't take a bucket of water and just slop it around the place and then leave it there, right? That is not cleaning in Western culture. That is a good way to get wood rot and mold going on. And so one of our approaches to that was to show them, you know, this is how you clean in Canada. And, you know, one of the other things that we figured out, not the toilet in the kitchen, is that you need to instruct folks about what melamine counter you can do with it and what you can't do with it. I.e., don't take a pot straight off the stove and stick it on the countertop. You will burn the counter, which, you know, our counter has a bunch of little rings on it now that we're not going to spend 20 grand rehabbing the kitchen. So that's just a permanent scar. And we're like, oh, and this was one of those international, like, cultural issues, I guess, because I think a lot more of the kitchen counters in the place that this particular tenant was from were made of concrete. So little difference. Yeah. But yeah, we have we do have signs posted in various different spots around the house, and one of them is in the bathroom. We have a sign posted to not flush anything that was not manufactured within your anatomy shouldn't be flushed. So, you know, and just make sure, because we do tell them, like, if you wind up costing us a plumber, they're about I don't know, 150, closer to $200 an hour around here, if you can even find one. And I'm very fortunate. My maintenance man is my husband. He has an amazing background. He used to be a plumber at one point, and so he is capable of doing a lot more than perhaps the basic handyman might. And like, he's replaced toilets and he's snaked out drains. He's actually replaced a 6 or 8 foot section of cast pipe in our basement, because 100-year-old house, cast iron pipes. And so that's been really helpful for us. But still, we want to make sure, like, we have in both the bathrooms now, because we had female tenants for so long, we have these little things called tub shrooms. I highly recommend them. They're the best hair catcher that I've found so far, and I've tried a bunch. And this one actually catches the hair, and if you clean them out on a regular basis, you won't wind up with the snake of hair that's about that big around and plugging your entire drain, which my husband fished out one time.
Yeah.
There was also the paintbrush, which I'm guessing was not manufactured within someone's anatomy.
No, but there again, different countries. When I lived in Korea, I didn't know you couldn't, the toilet, the bathroom looked exactly like a Western bathroom. And I flushed toilet paper down the toilet, and apparently you weren't supposed to do that. So they had to call the plumber in at one point.
Oh.
They don't ever tell, in that culture at that time, they didn't tell you directly. They waited until I got into a staff room through a bunch of people, and then they said, oh, by the way, Nelda, don't do this. Don't flush toilet paper down the toilet. And plug the drain, and they had to go, so of course the whole staff was watching.
Oh, great. Thanks for that feedback in front of this room of my peers.
So,
maybe we could put this on the radio
yes.
as well.
Oh, that's funny.
I didn't know, and that was not something that I read in any book, and I don't think it occurred to them to tell me, because a lot of people who own the apartment had never been to Canada or the United States. So there again.
But it's kind of like learning to live in a motorhome or on a boat, right? Like they tell you, flush this, don't flush that. And, maybe we need to have more open and frank conversations about toilet etiquette, because I think it's so different in different cultures. I do remember when I was traveling in Asian countries, and the first time I went into a bathroom where it was a hole in the floor with little ceramic footprints on either side of that hole, and I was like, okay, and how the heck does this work, right? So yeah, it's a little bit of a culture shock adjustment, if you will.
Yeah, but all learnable and instructable. So that's all. Really. Okay, for somebody wanting to get into investing in student rentals for the first time, if we kind of backtrack, what advice would you give them? How would you tell them to research this, or how to get into it?
It depends on how they're setting things up. Like, I did start as a homestay host, and that was kind of interesting, because what that was I was living in a house where we had extra bedrooms and space, but less income. And so we got in contact with a homestay agency that arranged for placements in English-speaking households for students that wanted to come to Canada. And basically, they were taking English as a second language classes and living in an immersion environment. And so as homestay hosts, we were responsible for providing a safe place to stay, as well as meals. And so that was interesting, because there is a requirement that you're actually there at night and cooking dinner and making food available for them for breakfast and to take to school for lunch and things like that. So, not for people who super value their privacy, but maybe for folks that have a spare bedroom, it's a decent way to go. It is non-taxable income, because if the government taxed it, then they'd need to give you tax write-offs for your food bill as well as everything else. And I think they've determined that that's just, it's too big of an accounting headache. So they just look at that and go, okay, well, we'll just ignore that. That's just, that's what you're being paid in order to host the student. When we got into doing the student rentals, because we were offering a furnished house, we spent a little bit of money on some things and a fair bit on others. One of the things that we really invested in was really good quality mattresses, because you want to make sure people are comfortable, really good quality pillows. And then we also invested in mattress encasements, box spring encasements, pillow encasements, so everything is bed bug proof.
Oh, that's
I
great.
don't know if Calgary has a big problem with that, but Vancouver and Victoria do have issues.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make sure if anybody ever did bring bed bugs in, that we don't have to throw out every mattress in the house, because 5 mattresses, it's a little bit of a pile. The rest of the furniture, all of the hard furnishings, we haunted thrift shops and we got some amazing stuff. And it's much more consistent with the character of the house as well. One of my husband's hobbies is refinishing furniture. So we've got some stunning antiques in the house. And we've tried deliberately to furnish the rooms in a period style with character stuff and things that, you know, they have their own appeal to them. And I think that was a really good strategy. You know, we could have spent thousands and more dollars on the furnishings, but we didn't need to, because it's amazing what people get rid of. And the Habitat for Humanity Restore is definitely our friend there. And the other one is, because we were doing student rentals, we wanted to make sure that all the rooms had desks and office chairs. So we went to BC's asset disposal warehouse. And so instead of spending like $200 or $300 on a reasonably comfortable desk chair, we were able to get the items that the BC government had determined that they no longer required. So it's basically their surplus disposal. And we'd pay about $40 for a chair. And this is like a multi-$100 chair that's fully adjustable, blah, blah, blah. And then we steam cleaned them all. And, you know, so things like that, it is possible to do. It did maybe take us a little bit longer to get things set up, but it wasn't quite as big of an outlay right up front. And so that was very helpful. And we've just slowly been upgrading as we go.
Calgary also has the government disposal. So yeah, there's a website. I have to look.
Yeah, I can't remember what it is, but and Calgary has had our problems with that too. When we used to manage multifamily units, and oh boy, one person brings in bed bugs, and then oh my gosh, it's terrible to get rid of.
Yeah, and we've been super fortunate that we have not had those kinds of issues. As bad as it ever was one of our tenants got freaked out by a spider in her room, and so we did a little spraying, and that was it for that. And you know, so we've been very fortunate that way, and I hope we continue to stay fortunate. And you know, we do try to make sure everything is as clean as possible. And, you know, I mean, it just takes, you know, having a tenant staying in the wrong hotel room someplace and somebody crawling into their luggage. It's really easy.
And libraries and buses and like a number of places you can pick them up. I had bed bugs when I was in Vancouver. And what I ended up doing was packing most of my clothing up for a year in plastic bags. Throwing out my mattresses, throwing out all my furniture, moving out of the property. Like it was a nasty, nasty mess. And yeah.
Well, some people get very freaked out by them and other people don't. I, however, get quite freaked out. I remember one apartment building, we went to deliver a welcome gift to one of the new sets of tenants. And Gil asked, so, you know, how are things going? And the wife had come from another country and she said, oh, everything's fine. We don't really like the apartment. We like the location, but we've got some bed bugs. And Gil's like, what? So he calls me, he's driving home. I'm like, where are your shoes? Where are you? Like, I wouldn't let him in the house. He had 12 of his shoes in a bag. Strip down. I threw everything, including his shoes, into the dryer at super high heat, 2 cycles. I just really didn't want bed bugs in our house. And then we had another, it was in a fairly nice condo, and somehow bed bugs got into the apartment, and then she was freaking out. She said, I want to stay with my mother. My mother won't let me stay with her. Can I stay with you?
He's actually asking. Yeah.
Oh, we don't want you either.
Your bed bug plagued body away from us.
Yeah, but we brought in exterminators. They came in 3 times. She followed the protocols. She was very good about that. They disappeared. But you know, it doesn't mean people are dirty. It just means that was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Just bad luck.
Yeah. Or they came from another building or whatever.
Yeah, well, in my case in Vancouver, that was on the first floor, and they just,
come back up.
They
They just-
migrate.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
what is the biggest learning you've learned from your target group here, your students, or you said you have young professionals as well?
Yeah. Oh gosh. You know, I'm not really sure. We've learned so many little things along the way. Like we've been tweaking how we do our rentals for years. We started with different questions, or at least to some extent, different questions on our intake process. One of the things that we did learn, we don't ever hold a room without money. Because you know we've gotten phone calls from people, and they seem really nice, and they're like, oh yeah, hold that room for us, and then you know a week before they're due to move in, oh sorry, circumstances have changed and we're not coming.
Yeah.
And we tell people, you know, your deposit is what holds your room. And we have had students that have then, you know, they contact us and they say things have changed, sorry I won't be there, and we're like, okay, you do know your deposit's forfeit, and now I have to go back to work, right? Because now I'm screening more tenants, and now I'm getting the last minute types instead of folks that have been planning ahead. So you know, I try to discourage that, right? But you know, typically we haven't had too many big problems with that. The one thing is, I think maybe listen to your gut. Like honestly, if you're talking to someone and there's any kind of a red flag, somebody else will come along. So feel free to tell them, no, sorry, this is not going to work, because it does need to work both ways. And I have had people that I've talked to and I thought, oh, they're really nice, and there was just that one little thing. And you know, I'll chat about it with my husband and he's like, nope. And I'm like, okay, thank you, I'm glad I talked to you. And we've always found another person.
Yeah, you always do. There's
Well,
always somebody else.
yeah, Victoria has a really strong market. And
Yeah.
the other thing is, I think no matter where you are, you don't have to say, this is why I'm not going to rent the place to you.
No,
So
don't say anything. Just
so-
say sorry.
Yep, if you have that feeling in the back of your neck that says, then
Yep.
Just listen to it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, your advice. My last question: has it been profitable for you?
It definitely has. We have been paying down our mortgage a lot faster than we might otherwise without the tenants. It's made it possible for us to have a beautiful place to live without, you know, I mean, yeah, we did buy in 2014. So that was a stroke of good fortune right there, because the market's gone a little bit nuts since then.
yes.
But you know, I mean, it makes it possible to live here without you know, financial hardship and a lot of belt tightening, which might otherwise be the case. And I'm hoping that you know, interest rates stay at least kind of low. You know, I mean, we can move around a little bit, but the tenants are really helpful in making sure that we're not you know, house rich and cash poor. So you know, we do have the ability to do things and have some fun in life, and it's a little bit of extra work, but thanks to the addition of the housekeeper, now it's not a lot of extra work.
That was my big lesson. I'd see all these guys who were in my house who were engineers. When they had time off, did they clean the house and do their laundry and cook meals ahead? No.
Yeah.
They went out and they had some fun. They dropped their laundry off at the laundromat, or you know, cleaning service, and they relied on my housekeeper to do their cleaning for them. And I thought, what am I working for? You know?
Yep.
Oh yes, those small things can be really big things. But yeah, so I guess I'm not going to talk to you about crunching the numbers for making the property work, but I'm assuming you did that before you bought the property. Was there any special formula that you used to calculate cash flow to see whether you rent the whole house out or have the rooms rented?
Not so much, but I do track everything. I mean, I'm a little anal retentive that way. So I've got my spreadsheet and it's got everything all laid out so that when it comes time for, you know, tax time, I keep every single receipt, whether or not it's something that I'm able to claim. And that's been quite helpful. You know, we have not been so unfortunate as to be audited or anything, but if we are, I've got all my little envelopes and I've got all my spreadsheets, and so it's all there. And I can tell you exactly how much the rental portion of the property is costing in terms of utilities, furniture, supplies, whatever. And so I know, and when I track that, then I kind of amortize it out over the period of a year, and I add like 5 or 10% for contingencies and hour-long showers. And that's what I base our rental rates on. So currently the tenants that we've got there now are probably paying for the sins of the former tenants, but I'm trying to keep it as affordable as possible. I mean, and like I said, we think we've got excellent value because for less than $1,000 a month, our most expensive room is less than $1,000 a month, and I won't get into too much specifics beyond that. But for that, those students have a furnished room. Those ones, the most expensive ones are like 12 by 14, I think, with huge closets, comfortable furnishings. They have access to all of the common areas in the house. They have free laundry. They have Wi-Fi. They have a once weekly housekeeper coming in. It includes all the utilities. And they've got some certainty in their lives. So they know that that's what they're paying. The only additional things they need to cover is like their food bill and, whatever consumables they're using.
And
so
too.
Yeah.
I mean, where you
So
are is
you're on a transit line, right? Or a bunch of
Yep.
transit.
Yep, absolutely.
So it's close to a university or college?
It's on the bus route that goes to there's one bus that goes past our place that goes out to the university, and it also goes past the college, and then there's another bus that joins two different campuses of the main college here. And so yeah, we're on excellent bus routes. There is one place that we're not on a good bus route for, which is Royal Roads, for anybody familiar, out in Colwood. And I will tell people who are calling to inquire about Royal Roads, you don't want to live here. This is not a good place for you because you will be commuting for a good hour and a bit each way. And I discourage the ones that I don't think will be happy here, because what we want is the tenants for whom this is going to be an awesome place to live, because those are the ones who are going to be happy. And a happy tenant is not a pain in my neck.
Yes. Yeah. You don't want the PETAs.
Yeah.
Feed in the other area.
Yep. That's the one.
Okay, so that was most informative.
It's enlightening.
Yeah,
Yes.
very enlightening. And when I think about cash flow, and I just wrote an article about why invest in student rentals, and most of the people that I know who have short-term or student rentals say, well, if you rent out a whole house, you can only get one income from one family, and then if they leave, you have to mortgage and utilities yourself. Whereas if room rent, even if a couple people leave, you've always got some kind of money coming in.
I always think about our guy in Kevin, his name was Fort Mac, and he actually bought a house when he was in university, and he rented the house out, and this is how he was able to afford to live, like
for free.
It was brilliant. Like
finishing his trades.
It's a young kid, like he's 20 years old. He's already got a house. He's renting it out. He's got this thing going. He's got student rentals.
I would totally have done that if I could have qualified for the mortgage when I first moved to Victoria, because that was actually something that I looked into briefly, and it is a great way to go. And the students, that's one of the selling features for our place is if you move in here, then you know what your rent is going to be. It's not going to change if somebody else moves in or out. If you move into an apartment with a buddy or two buddies or whatever, if they move out, your rent just went up.
Yep.
So yeah, it's a selling feature.
Yes. Yeah. But what we were just talking about with the fellow, I believe his parents co-signed for him. So that's house hacking.
Yeah.
In the United States, they have something called a kiddie condo loan. So, but basically it works the same in Canada. If you buy a property as a student, but your parents co-sign for you on the mortgage. And then you're learning how to be a business owner and landlord, and you're also having your rent paid for, and your friends or your other students are paying off your mortgage. So yeah, great idea.
Mhm.
Smart idea for you and your husband to have done this together. And I really love how organized you've been and how you have a heart. You know, you do the pumpkin carving, you do nice things for
Yes.
them. You try and keep the rents reasonable because, you know, you remember what it was like when you first moved and as a student and how difficult it was. And I think that's really great. And kudos to you, because whenever there are good people who are good landlords, it raises the bar for all of us. So
Well, thank you very much. And yeah, this next weekend, we're looking forward to doing a tree decorating because we asked if they wanted a tree and they said, yes, please. So yeah, we're going to put up a tree and do some decorating.
oh, that's brilliant.
It's wonderful.
Yes.
And that's making people part of your family
Yeah.
at the same time. So
Yep.
yeah, it really makes a huge difference.
Yes, I just dropped my wrap up. Word. So thank you once again, Darcy, for joining us. And for those of you who are watching, thank you very much. If you like this session, like us on Facebook, which is the Real Estate Investment Resource Network, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is Nelda Schulte, where we will post this video tomorrow. And you will find me on Twitter at Nelda Helps Me. Also, if you would like access to free landlording and investing resources, go to www.neldaschulte.com. There, I'm going to be like the weather report girl, motioning here, and click on the green membership button, and you've got access to all kinds of free resources. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, listeners. Thank you so much for joining us, Darcy. It has been our pleasure to have you on our show.
Thank you very much for having me. That was really fun.
You are an absolute font of wisdom.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Yes, so thank you so much. And thank you very much to our listeners. And we are very happy to support you in your journey for being profitable real estate investors. Good night, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. We'll see you in 2 weeks. TBD, to be determined. Okay.
Bye for
Good night.
now.
Merry Christmas.
Same to you.